the four of us just sort of bobbing around on this 8 meter.
We're rowing with purpose. We're not bobbing around.
Sorry.
Hi everyone, and welcome to another episode of 80% Mental. Certainly the best sport and performance psychology podcast that I've ever produced. My name's Dr. Pete Olusoga, and if this is your first time listening, first of all, where have you been? But second, glad you can make it. Come on in, have a seat. I'll get you a drink, tea, coffee, warm milk perhaps. This is the third series of the podcast, although in fairness, the point at which one series ends and another one starts is entirely arbitrary and depends on when I feel like taking a break. But I'm still going with this series, and I'm trying to explore the psychology of different types of performance in all sorts of different contexts. And we've had various athletes and coaches on the podcast so far, but also actors and singers, dancers, musicians. And it's been fascinating to learn about the different and sometimes very similar performance challenges that they face and their mental approaches to performance. So you can listen back to all of the episodes from Series 3 of the podcast at 80percentmental.com or wherever you listen to your podcasts, and subscribe too as well so you don't miss out on any future high quality content. But obviously do that later when you finish listening to this episode, in which I'm continuing to explore performance psychology by thinking about the psychology of the sea. Now, the furthest I've ever rowed is a few laps around Saltwell Park in Gateshead in a boat that could be described best as just about almost adequate. I've done a fair bit of training on the old Concept 2 rowing machine in the gym, and anybody who uses them knows that it's the most horrific of all forms of exercise. So the idea of rowing non-stop for 3,000 miles across the Atlantic is about as far from what I can imagine doing as possible. But it's exactly what my two incredible guests are going to be doing in just a few months' time. So without further ado, it's my absolute pleasure to introduce you, first of all, to Laura Langton. Now, Laura's an investment manager based between Cheltenham and London and is one quarter of Team Ace of Blades, a 4-woman team undertaking this 3,000-mile unsupported row across the Atlantic Ocean. Laura, who's just sipping a cup of tea and I'm about to ask her a question, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you very much for having us.
No, absolutely delighted to have you on. We'll kind of get into a little bit more about your background in a moment, but I also want to welcome Kit Windsor, who is another quarter of Team Ace of Blades, and Kit is a Kent-born, Bristol-based project manager and is going to be joining Laura on what she describes as the adventure of a lifetime, rowing across the Atlantic with 3 like-minded women. Kit, welcome to 80% Mental.
Again, thanks for having us. It's really exciting to be here.
No, I can't wait to quiz you a little bit on what it is you're actually doing. It sounds like an amazing adventure. But I'm really grateful to both of you for giving up some time to come and talk about this incredible challenge and maybe how psychology is going to play a pretty important role in what you're doing. I suppose before we get started, for our listeners, could you maybe tell us a little bit more about the challenge itself? I mean, Kit, how long does it take to row across the Atlantic for starters?
So we'd like to do it in about 40 days, or Laura will correct me and say we are going to do it in 40 days. That's sort of, it varies. Sort of the men's team sort of come in anything between 30 days plus, and the women's team come in a little bit after that. The world record is 34 days. That was set in sort of a year that it was sort of hold on. A lot of records are broken that year. The fastest ladies crew did it in 42 days last year. So, it's kind of very weather dependent, but the aim of the game is 40 days or less.
Sure. And where is it that you're sailing specifically to and from to get across the Atlantic?
Well, I have to correct you because you said sailing and it's definitely rowing.
And we're like 3 minutes in as well?
It's fine. It's the one thing. It's when people go, so when do you start sailing? And you're like, no, we're not sailing.
I'm going to go back and edit it so I say rolling.
So we leave from La Gomera in the Canary Islands
Yeah.
and row across to English Harbour in Antigua. So 2 very lovely places to start and finish.
Okay, and awesome. And this is part of a bigger thing, isn't it? This is the world's toughest row. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yep, so it used to be the Talisker Whiskey Atlantic Challenge, and they've rebranded because they've launched a Pacific row as well. So they do the Atlantic row in December and the Pacific in June. They've been running it for, I think, over sort of 10 years or so. And the one thing that we've really enjoyed about ocean rowing and taking on this challenge is the fact that the community is just incredible. One thing about ocean rowers is that they love talking about ocean rowing, but also there's so much to know that it's amazing to lean on people who've already been through it. Everybody's so generous of spirit and time and resources and experience and knowledge. So you really feel like you've got a whole sort of army behind you trying to help you be as successful as you can be at your crossing. So I think it's an amazing community and challenge to be part of, because there is obviously the option to do it on your own and just decide to leave from one point and go across to another. And there's lots of different ways that you can cross the Atlantic, but actually there's the support network, I think, is reassuring for us, and especially parents, partners, family members.
Yeah.
I think they like to know that there is at least somebody watching over us and moving us in the direction we need to be going in.
Yeah, so the community elements are kind of a huge part of what you're doing, this huge community of rowers who are kind of undertaking the challenge all together, I guess, even though it's a sort of individual endeavor. I guess what I want to get to really is like, how have you got to the point where you're doing this? Like, because it seems like a fairly sort of a big adventure, to put it bluntly. But so, a little bit about kind of your background, really. I mean, Kit, have you always been the adventurous type?
I'd probably say yes on that one. When I finished uni, I met Laura and I met rowing at university.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I graduated, when I was a kid, we used to go on flotilla holidays with a company called Sailing Holidays. And sort of the last time I went out, I was like 17 and was like, I'm going to do this one day. So I did for 2 years after university. And I worked at the London Boat Show for the company that I worked for, and saw an ocean rowing boat there, and they were doing it as part of Talisker. I think they must have done it in 2016, maybe. And sort of saw it and was like, that's a bit of me, that. I can very specifically remember having a conversation with my dad when I got home saying, I'm going to do this one day. And he's like, maybe sort of do it when you're 30 and you sort of started your career a little bit, and jokes on him because I was 30 last year. So, and then the team got together, sort of, one of my friends from sailing did the row in 2020, and she shared a post that Liz had put out looking for a crew member, or two crew members at that time. And I sort of jumped at the opportunity. And then Laura sort of came on board after that.
Yeah, I'm very much the sort of corporate sort of career focus. I'm not the adventurous type whatsoever. And
Okay.
I'm not really a massive fan of the ocean. I mean, I've definitely got more okay with it, but it's never been something that I'd thought of. And then kind of came up and Kit mentioned it, and I thought, this is something that if I say no to it, I'm probably always going to regret saying no or not putting myself forward. And I spoke to my boyfriend, now fiance, family, and my work, and said, like, what do you think? And everybody was incredibly supportive, and just said, you've got to go for it. And I think I've got the personality and the drive to make sure that if I put myself forward for it, I don't let anybody down, and it's done to the best of my ability and the team's ability. But the one thing I would say is that, somebody says to you, do you want to row across the ocean? And you think, God, that's going to be difficult. But you don't quite realise everything else that comes with it. The project side of things is just absolutely enormous. And it's been fantastic. But I think sometimes if we knew now if we knew then what we know now, it might be quite a different situation.
I mean, that's going to be the trailer for this episode. If somebody asks you about rowing across the ocean, you think, oh, that's going to be a bit difficult. I mean, I imagine it would be, yeah.
Yeah.
So I guess, what is it about this particular race? Because obviously there's the Pacific as well that they do as well. So is there something about this particular race that you're kind of really drawn to?
I think for me, it's just the allure of the ocean and the sea. Like, I am a proper water baby. Anything that involves water, sign me up. Like, I did a lot of swimming when I was a kid. At university, I played water polo and I rowed. I've kept up rowing since university. So I think a big draw of it is that for me. But I think also I'm really excited by like the fear of the unknown. So for me, I kind of feel like I know that there are going to be situations that are going to scare me, but currently I don't feel like I know what those situations are, and I'm looking forward to kind of testing myself for that.
When there have been ones that have scared you already.
There have. But like it's like you deal with it in the moment, and then afterwards it's a bit like, that was a bit scary, wasn't it?
we had a fantastic situation where the weather massively picked up during one of our training rows, so we had to go and anchor in a bay, and the decision was made that we would anchor in the bay, and then like when we saw that the weather was dying down about 7:00, we would then row round to a much quieter bay and take the boat in. But the point was that we were spending the night on board the boat, and Kit put the anchor out, and it was like she was every sort of half an hour she's like, it's not holding. I was like, it's seriously holding. She's like, it's not holding. She was like, look how close those rocks are. And it's like, you're looking into pitch black. I was like, yeah, they look really close, Kit. I don't know what you're talking about. And then every sort of, I don't know, probably 20 minutes, it then became sort of more incremental, where she was like, we need to keep moving the boat backwards. We're getting closer and closer to the rocks. And I think we worked out that it probably took us 4 hours to get to the point where she thought we were too close to the rocks. But because she just had kept us up all night by going, I'm terrified. I was like, right. Anyway, so we moved the boat back, and I was like, right, we're going to re-anchor. And in my head, I just thought, right, we're not leaving this bay until 7:00 when we said we were going to leave, because I'm not letting this change. We're not letting this be a thing where we just don't stick to our guns. And then at sort of 6:59, there was a knock on the cabin door. Kit opened the door and she was like, yep, we said we're going, we're off. I was like, and then when we got round and the boat was all sort of put back on the trailer and everything was fine, I was like,
so funny.
I was like, were you all right there? She's like, yeah, I don't really know what that was about. I think when it's your boat and you know how expensive it is, it's a very different situation. But that was one of those ones where I was like, okay, mate, like, we're all right. We're not going to die.
It's going to be fine. So it's all like a learning curve, and like I think we probably all have that enjoyment in ourselves, that we all play off each other's different strengths and things like that. So yeah, it's a big thing.
No, fantastic. I can't wait to hear more about kind of the preparation that's gone into this and that's going to be going into the rest of it. I imagine that there's some slightly different motivations as well for doing this, as well as kind of your own personal challenge. And, Laura, even though you hate the ocean, you kind of that fear of missing out, I guess, as you kind of described. But, what are some of the reasons you're doing it, the causes that you're supporting? Because you're going to raise a lot of money for charity as well by doing this.
So we've got three charities, Macmillan Cancer, the Outward Bound Trust and Prostate Cymru. So we wanted to go for a large, a medium and a small charity in order to then cover off as well issues that were close to our hearts, but also sort of teenage and younger people, and also men as well, because obviously we're a crew of 4 women, but we just thought that it's an all-encompassing thing. So for me, I requested for Macmillan Cancer because my mother had leukemia when I was 16, and whilst we didn't really use them as much as I know that other people have, they were always there waiting in the wings for us. And lent on them for a bit of support. And unfortunately, my mum's still with us, so I'm very lucky in that respect. But I know that having just like a third party there that wasn't, a family member or a friend or somebody who was too involved in the situation, that could just support me and my brother when we're, still children and going through something quite dramatic in our lives. So that was really important to me. And then Liz, our crewmate, was supported by the Outward Bound Trust through her teenage years, and they sort of build resilience and confidence in young people through adventures. So we couldn't really think of a better charity to support through what we're doing, because we're definitely trying to build resilience and confidence in what we're undertaking. And then Prostate Cymru is the Welsh prostate cancer charity, and we've all got family members who have been affected by prostate cancer, and I think that the work that they do is fantastic. So really pleased to be able to support 3 such amazing causes. And it was a really difficult decision.
Yeah.
I mean, that was probably one of the hardest decisions. We found picking a name surprisingly easy in comparison to choosing charities, because, when it boils down to it, when we're out there and it's really difficult, we're thinking, why are we doing this? And there's obviously the personal endeavour, the personal achievement, raising awareness for women in sport and, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. But fundamentally, we want to raise money to support these causes. So it's really important that we've got an affinity with them, and that in our darkest moments out there, which there will be many, I'm sure, we understand why we're doing it.
Yeah, fantastic. And I think they're charities that a lot of people will sort of resonate with quite strongly, and we'll put the link to your website in the episode description. So if people want to support the team or find out a little bit more about the team, they can go to that website and perhaps support you guys in what you're doing and help you raise a little bit more money for charity.
Thank you.
So you're listening to the 80% Mental podcast. I'm here with Laura Langton and Kit Windsor, half of Team Ace of Blades, who are going to be rowing, not sailing, make that mistake twice, across the Atlantic it's the start in December, is that right?
Yeah.
Leave on the 12th.
So can you, I guess, we know kind of what you're doing, but can you tell us a little bit more about the boat? Because I was fortunate enough to be able to see the boat that you're going to be on a few weeks ago. Can you tell us a little bit about the boat and kind of what it's going to be like for the 4 of you to have to sort of, be cooped up there for 40 days and 40 nights?
It's a real, I find it quite hard to describe the boat, because it's kind of like a really bizarre mashup of a yacht and a river rowing boat, in the sense that it's like obviously the sense of it is to row it, so it doesn't have a keel, it's just got a rudder and what's called a dagger board that you can put in and out depending on the weather conditions. It's like an 8.6 metre long oval with the back cut off with a rectangle out the middle, and then what surprises a lot of people is that you can sleep in both ends. In both the cabins. I'm 6 foot tall and can lay down in both of them, which does alarm a lot of people when sort of you can see the boat in its entity. Yeah. But when we've been speaking to other crews, they're like, those boats are absolute TARDISes. And an example of that is that we were giving one of the cabins a good old clean last weekend, and we found loads of food that the previous crew had left over. So
nice.
And we've had the boat for over a year. Yeah. So it shows you either how little we've cleaned it or how much there are, like how many hidden pockets there are around it.
Yeah. So, but they are purpose-built ocean rowing boats by a company called Rannoch, who are based out of Essex. And yeah, it's just sort of, they're designed to self-right. They are really, really light. So when we're towing it around, it's about, I think the weight of the actual boat is about 500 kilos. And then when we get to the start line and we've got all of our equipment on it, it'll be a loaded weight, about 1.2 tons, I believe.
I think also fundamentally they're built to keep us alive. So whilst they're, we had an event at my work yesterday, and one of my colleagues said, "It's not very luxurious, is it?" Well, it depends what your definition of luxury is, but fundamentally, it's got everything on it that we need to survive.
Yeah.
I think everybody wants to do the best that they can do. So we're building in different storage compartments and sort of different layouts so that it's sort of purpose built for how we want it to be, because fundamentally when you're out there you need to know where everything is, whether it's middle of the night or first thing in the morning, and you need to be able to use what you've got in order to make sure that your life is as easy as possible, and the boat provides that for you. So
and we're training with everything where we would have it or will have it when we're doing the row as well, so that when we're training and we're tired, we know exactly where to go for those pieces of equipment now when we'll need them in less than 5 months' time.
Yeah. There's a slightly worried look when you say less than 5 months' time there.
It's come around so fast. Like one of the girls at the start line said to us last year, she's like, "This has been the quickest year of my life," and I kind of believed her, but then
also everybody says that, don't they, when something's coming up? But this, like the fact that we're almost in August is absolutely bizarre, and it means that we've got 3 months left of the boat.
Yeah,
or just under 3 months left of the boat, because it gets shipped on a container at the end of October. So we're like, right, okay, we've got a lot of stuff to do in a very small amount of time. But I think, we're in this sort of pressure cooker now, which is fantastic, and it's really great that the four of us all know what it's like. But also, it's a pretty detrimental position to be in for everything else that goes on in our life.
Yeah.
So I've never been out on the ocean in a boat, and you talked a little bit earlier about kind of being out there in the dark, and obviously you can't really stop and there isn't really anywhere to stop and have a rest in the middle of the Atlantic, right? So, what are some of the conditions that you're expecting? Like, what's it actually going to be like to be doing this for 40 days and 40 nights?
So I think one of the things is that the conditions that we're training in are unlikely to sort of be the mill pond that we go out in at the moment, because around the coast of the UK, it's much more dangerous than rowing off the coast, off the Atlantic, which I know sounds bizarre, but
there's less stuff to hit.
Yes, essentially there's less stuff to hit in the middle of the Atlantic. The general conditions that we are told that we'll be expecting are 20-foot waves, sort of 20 to 25 knot winds. We'll be hitching a ride on the the trade winds. So that's sort of why we go from La Gomera, and that's the time of year. If you were so lucky to have a boat in the Medj and wanted to winter in the Caribbean, that would be the time that you go. So yeah, I think I don't necessarily think we've rowed in the open ocean before either. But the conditions that we are able to train in around the coast of the UK, it's sort of, we're trying to come at the waves at a different angle so that we're experiencing the boat rocking around quite a lot, and sort of seeing if he's going to be the first one to have seasickness and things like that. So yeah, that's sort of, there's a lot of like, I think there's less hazards in the Atlantic for sure than the ocean.
You can't emulate what we're going to be doing by the training that we are doing. It's just impossible to do that. We can't, to lose sight of land for our training is virtually impossible, going around the English coastline. We're also only insured 12 nautical miles off land, so we like to make sure that we're in a location where we can still get our boat repaired if required. And I think also as well that the amount of training that we put in, I think there's some statistic where it's if you're training for a marathon, the amount of training that you can put in relation to the ocean row is about the equivalent of running a mile for running a marathon.
Right.
So it's just you can't prepare for what we're going to be seeing out there. You don't get the same sense of how small we are in comparison to the vastness of the ocean. You're not in. When we go out on the coast, we can radio and call people. If we were in a real pickle, we'd be able to be picked up pretty quickly. A boat was lost last year in the 2022 race, the Talisker, which was what it was last year. And I think they were at sea in the life raft for 9 days. So
18 hours.
Was it only 18 hours, was it? But they were picked up pretty quickly, but still it's a lot longer than it would be if we were off the coastline, because we call the harbour master and just say, any chance you come get us? So it's a slightly different situation.
He has told us that it's preferably the case that we don't do that.
It was the last year there was 2 boats that lost rudders, and it was the team that lost their rudder. They had to wait 9 days without being able to steer or really go anywhere until the safety yacht was able to get to them. So, you are far from support, and if anything does go wrong, it's on you to make sure that that you're able to resolve it. Whereas when we're training, we definitely have some training wheels on.
Sure. So I guess is that, I was going to ask you about the mental challenges. What do you think the sort of biggest mental challenges are? But I guess that's sort of being isolated and having to rely on yourselves as one of them. So, are you doing any sort of preparation in that way? That the sort of, if this happens, then this is our response. Like if this happens, the contingency planning, I guess.
Yeah. So we're we've had many sort of conversations. We've got a coach called Tim who helps us with our sort of crisis management, and we've also got scenario planning with a gentleman called Angus Collins, who is an ocean rower, and that's really to make sure that whilst we're here and before we go, we make the decisions on how we would resolve problems that arise at sea when we aren't sleep deprived, aren't exhausted, aren't hungry, aren't dehydrated, aren't maybe a little bit peed off with the people that you've had to spend the past X amount of time with and had no connection from somebody else.
And we forgot it was your birthday.
Yeah. And so it's one of those things where, you make those decisions when you sort of sound-ish mind and have talked it all through, so that when it actually comes to it, you know what the answer is. So if if the conversation is, right, Kit's been out in the sun and she hasn't put any sun cream on for the past 4 hours, she's absolutely toasted herself.
Kit's an idiot.
Firstly, she's an idiot. But secondly, right, she needs to get inside a cabin and try and recuperate herself, cool herself down and sort herself out. So she won't be able to row for the next 2 hours. Laura, you said that you would cover her shift if that happens. That's what you said you would do. You're going to do it. No sort of, but I don't really want to do it now. No, that was the decision that was made. And then that means that actually, if Kit needs to take a 2-hour respite in order to sort herself out, that doesn't then become she can't row for a day because she's got sunstroke and she's being violently sick, and it's a lot worse than it would have been. So there's a lot of crisis management and ensuring that if something happens, we have come up with the idea, and a lot of our decision making will be deferred to a land team. So a crew of people that will radio and just say, right, this has happened. How do we fix it? What did we say we would do to resolve it? What's the contingency plan if I break my arm? What's going to happen? Okay. And then we then go from there, rather than thinking, we'll just sort that out in the middle of the ocean, because the time that you have off the oars is utilised for washing, cleaning, eating, admin, sleeping. So decision making and trying to have a sort of team talk in those 2 hours is not really what the time's meant for.
Yeah. So you're taking the decision-making process away from the, I guess, crisis time, really. Yeah. So that it's just a case of following a checklist or a predetermined process. It kind of takes that cognitive element out of it when you're kind of busy trying to do other stuff as well.
Yeah, completely. Yeah.
So you kind of mentioned the idea of, you being on a boat with people, the same 3 other people for over a month. Talk to me about that, because that's got to be a mental challenge in itself.
I think we're really fortunate in the amount of time that we've spent together. And I feel like a lot of the crews probably do spend as much time together as we're spending. And we have, I think I didn't see Liz for about 2 weeks the other day, and before I saw her on this week. I was like, I've not seen Liz in ages. I miss her. And it had literally been 10 days. Like, that's how much time that we spend together. I'd seen you.
I think we're really lucky though, because Kit and I have known each other for 10 plus years. Yeah. And so we've got this relationship where we've kind of been super close, and then we've drifted apart, and then we've been super close again, and then we've seen each other a bit but not really, and then this has come up. And so I think we've got this sort of thread of a relationship, and Liz and Beth are sort of newer in our lives, so we've got a really nice mix of known each other and know probably a bit too much about each other, and new people that we don't necessarily know that much about. So we're learning about each other, but in very different ways. So I think that does break it up a bit. And I think some people do it as complete strangers. Some people do it as, really old school friends or family members. And I think it works. You make it work for you.
Yeah.
But what we've got is that, we can just sit and row together on the boat and just chat rubbish for 2 hours. Or we can just listen to a podcast in like complete silence or just row in complete silence with nothing on and just be comfortable. So I think we're fully aware that it's not always going to be
the better roses.
Yeah, I was going to say plain sailing, but we're not allowed to say sailing. So. But it's also knowing that, I'm probably the most likely to flip out because I've got a very red personality. And but the girls know that that's just because I'm just a very direct person. So there's sort of no airs and graces. And if somebody's done something to annoy me, I just tell them because I don't think there's any point in beating around the bush. But then the response is, that's not something to hold a grudge about, or it's just an air clearing, move on, continue. And we're just learning that about each other, really, aren't we?
Yeah, and I think we we did a splat. So Tim Splash, who's our coach, got us all to do this splash, and it sort of puts you on like introvert, extroverted, detail orientated, big picture. And between the four of us, we complete the circle. So I think the fact that we have that actually is really beneficial for us, because it means that whoever is like the less detail orientated person, you've got another person in the team picking that up, and they're helping each other see the bigger picture and make sure we're getting all those details picked up. But we also did a 24-hour row, so in March, to sort of emulate our shift pattern. So 2 people on the oars at any one time, and then
on a row machine,
on an erg, And then Laura thought it was a good idea to then tag a 26-mile walk on the end of it
overnight.
So
seems perfectly reasonable. Yeah.
I'm a very reasonable person.
Which actually was really good, because we then came together, I think was it the weekend or the weekend after?
Yeah, to
have a debrief on it.
Yeah, the 24-hour row and the 26-mile hike, not everything went perfectly, but the whole point was that it didn't. It was meant to show our weaknesses and see at what points do people flail, or at what point do people pick up and like dust themselves off, etc. And then, as you were saying, that catch up. Yeah,
so we went into the sort of debrief with 3 questions. Not 3 questions, sorry. We went into the debrief and it was 3 things that went well individually, 3 things that we could have done better, or sort of to improve on individually, and the same for the team. So 3 things that went well as a team and 3 things that could have gone better. And I think we basically had sort of one big group therapy session for about 6 hours, like chatting. And it was a really bonding moment for us, but in terms of understanding who's better at speaking their needs, sort of if someone goes into themselves, what do you need to pull to help us pull you out of that? And so
we definitely learned from that one as well. And Kit's going to kill me for saying this, but she's a massive overpacker. Okay, to the point where it's like
it's a running joke now.
It's like why? Like I swear she did have the kitchen sink. Okay, it's ridiculous. I think she had about 20 litres of water when she knew we were stopping to pick up water on the way, which was just ridiculous.
I'd just been prepared.
And she was like, "Oh, my back's really hurting." So I picked up her bag, and I was like, "No kidding! This is why are you carrying all?" And it was got to the point where you're like, "I actually can't walk. It's so like my back hurts this much." I was like, "Right, so maybe you should have said." I was like, "Firstly, my bag's basically empty, so I could have carried half of your stuff for you. And secondly, maybe you should have said about 4 hours ago that it was becoming a niggle, because now we're getting into this point where we probably could have solved this a lot easier 4 hours ago." So that was it's now a running joke that we tell her to pack her bag and then we repack it for her and throw half of it away.
I love that.
I always have snacks for everyone.
But I love that. I love that, although you're sort of preparing individually for the mental challenge, you're preparing as a team as well, and really taking the time to get to know each other, properly, because you're going to be with those people in a confined space for an extended period of time. So I think that social cohesion that, with the team members that you perhaps don't know as well as you two who've known each other for a long time, it's going to be such an important part, again, when it comes down to those crises or those moments of where it becomes difficult, sort of really knowing how each other work and how to approach each other. Sounds like you're kind of doing a lot of work on that stuff.
Yeah, and I think we always knew that we would do this as well, in terms of trying to understand how we'll work together, because it's all well and good sort of knowing each other on a surface level, but then when push comes to shove, when you're in the middle of the Atlantic and someone might lose their rag with someone, and it's not it's not through
naming no names.
it's not through a direct personal thing. It might be that person's just at the end of their wick and sort of just needs to have that outlet almost, and then 5 minutes later everything's fine, and it's not personal on anyone. And it's I think we as a team all know that, because I know we're all grown-ups essentially. And behave that way as well. So
it's we have to keep saying to each other, it's not just a little 10k run that we're doing that's over in however long it takes. It's actually, we're going to go and live on this very small boat in this very vast ocean, trying to get from one point to another point as efficiently and safely and everything else as possible. So whilst personalities and everything come into it, fundamentally, as long as everybody is doing what they should be doing, that's the only way that we're going to achieve it. And therefore, if Kit's not clipped on and continually doesn't clip herself on, and I tell her to, and she blows up and has a go at me, all I'm trying to say to her is, we don't want to lose you overboard.
And also,
we like paperwork for me.
Yeah.
Which again feels like it's a quite reasonable thing to want somebody to do. Right?
But when you're out there, it's a very, it might feel like I'm just nitpicking at her and going, you're not doing something right. You're not doing something right. For me, I'm saying to her, we don't want to lose you. You aren't being safe. You're jeopardizing the team and yourself. But by her knowing that I'm not just trying to be nasty to her, and I'm actually trying to be supportive, that will mean that we try and avoid all of those situations. And the whole thing that we're doing is trying to survive/thrive, which people thrive out there.
Yeah.
And we're only going to do that with each other's support. And when you're in a boat with 4 people, everybody needs to be pulling their weight and doing as much as they can do, because otherwise that's where tensions come up and somebody's not doing what they should be doing. Well, obviously that's going to annoy people. I'll definitely be more vocal about it than other people. That doesn't mean it annoys anybody else less. But it just
you'll just be the one to say it.
Yeah, they'll just lean on me and they'll be like, "You be bad cop, Laura."
But I think as well, we've spoken quite a lot about our goals for the row, and I think quite a lot of people have very similar goals. But ours are to get across safely, be better friends, or as good of friends as better friends. We'll know a hell of a lot more about each other, I'm sure, by the end. Be better friends.
The idea is not to be worse friends.
Yeah. As good friends.
As a minimum.
We need to be better. But we've gone through this life-changing experience. Yeah. She's still all right, I guess.
She's fine. So it's get there across safely, be better friends than when we started, and also to have done ourselves justice. And I think that is probably one of our big drivers, is just sort of knowing that we're all doing the best that we can and will be when we're out there. And sort of one of the things that sort of keeps me going sometimes when I'm like, I don't want to go to the gym, and then I'm at the gym, I'm like, no, I'm thinking about us all sat on the beach in Antigua with a rum and coke or a beer, just sat thinking that was we did that.
And also, when something happens and something like life crops up and you go, I don't want to do that training session, or I haven't got time to write that blog post, or I haven't got time to contact that sponsor, or I haven't got the energy to go into that meeting and have that conversation. You think, actually, if I don't do it, I'm letting 3 other people down.
Yeah.
And then I'm also letting down everybody else who's given us all their time and energy. I mean, like yourself and everybody who's taken an interest in what we do, if we're not trying to do it to the best of our ability, we're letting people down. And that's, for us, I think for all of us, it's the worst feeling, knowing that we've got financial backers, we've got people who are willing to give us their houses to stay in or to let us go out of marinas for free and etc.
Our partners.
Yeah, our partners who
our
have
long-suffering partners with this as well.
And you just think, right, if we're out in the middle of the ocean and we haven't prepared as much as we need to and we fail, or we take twice the amount of time that we said we were going to take, okay, we've still achieved it, but we haven't done ourselves justice. We haven't done it as safely as we probably could have done, and we're letting ourselves down in that respect. So whilst it is a huge undertaking and we're probably going in depth on every aspect, I think it's needed. It's not just like a morning out of your life. It's been 3 years. It will have been 3 years when we finished of constant preparation. So
it's all consuming, isn't it?
But we've learned a lot, and it's awesome, and I would definitely recommend it to anybody.
This is the 80% Mental podcast, and I'm here with Laura Langton and Kit Windsor, half of Team Ace of Blades, who are going to be rowing. God damn it. So I had Wendy Searle on the podcast in the last series, and she walked unsupported to the South Pole.
Amazing.
And I kept calling it a trip, as if she was like popping down the shops or something. I was all really embarrassed, like it's not a trip, it's a whole massive, adventure. So anyway, I'm here with Kit Windsor and Laura Langton, who are rowing across the Atlantic in a few months, and we've been talking about the sort of mental preparation for the trip. And one of the things that you've mentioned a couple of times now is this idea of just the vastness of the ocean and kind of how small you are in this boat going across the ocean. And I think it's, like, for me as well, it's really difficult for people to just comprehend like how big the Earth actually is and how big the Atlantic Ocean actually is. So is that something that you've thought about? Is that something that you've prepared for, that sort of feeling of almost being tiny in this vastness of the ocean? Because you can't see land, there's no landmarks. What's that going to be like, and how are you sort of preparing for that?
I definitely think it's going to be bizarre. Sort of the sort of almost like the sensation of it, and also just knowing that it is us, it's the four of us just sort of bobbing around on this 8 meter.
We're rowing with purpose. We're not bobbing around.
Sorry, it's us. We're rowing across this ocean in this 8 meter boat, essentially. And it's really unlikely that we're going to see anybody else or anything else for that, or not anything. I'm hoping we're going to see some amazing wildlife. Like, we spoke to a guy that did it last year. He said that they were basically underneath them, there was 200 dolphins and then 6 orcas chasing them. I was like, wow. That would make me a little bit nervous.
We talked about the dolphin last week.
The dolphin last week?
And that dolphin was heading towards us.
Oh, yeah.
He was like, it's going to hit me. I was like, I think it won't.
I was like, imagine if this dolphin breaches and jumps on the boat and no one would believe us.
It was like heading directly for us. And I was like,
Laura, put the GoPro on.
I was like, it's not going to hit us.
Is that in your list of what if scenarios that you prepare? What's your planned response if a dolphin jumps on board?
Some crews in the past have been struck by a Marlin.
Right.
So they're not entirely sure why or the frequency, but one of the theories is that because you get quite a lot of fish underneath the boat as you're rowing, and they're hunting those fish, but then they sort of just get their nose stuck in the boat. So we need to be prepared to essentially, for this situation,
repair a major artery as well.
Yeah, repair a major artery. Yeah, because a couple of years ago, someone was in the cabin when they got struck, and it went in between their legs. So they woke up to like Marlin striking between their legs, which would be alarming at the best of times. So then we need to be prepared to jump in, epoxy seal it with like marine wet set epoxy, and people don't tend to cut them out because they like to take them home as a trophy.
Also, if you take it out, you've got a massive hole in the boat.
But I mean, like, saw it off. So,
Yeah. Because sometimes you have to saw the actual marlin off the other end. Sometimes they snap their nose off and they swim away. Or other times you've actually got to get rid of the fish.
Yeah.
I'll leave that to you.
Yeah. But in the sense of sort of like the vast of the ocean, when we're in the middle of the Atlantic, the deepest part is 5 kilometers deep. We are required to, if we want to maintain speed, to clip on and jump over and scrape all of the sort of gunk off the bottom. I'm quite happy to do this. I think you're like, I want to do it, but
I'll do it. But I mean, it's not something that's. I mean, a lot of this hasn't been on my bucket list, if I'm honest. And also, when somebody says to you, "Do you want to row across the Atlantic Ocean?" you don't think, "Oh, I've got to go and avoid being shark food."
But yeah, sort of, I'm almost quite looking forward to just sort of being in the middle of nowhere and like it's just you. And I feel like it will also probably be quite sleep deprived anyway, but it will almost be like a complete out of body experience, and just that sort of isolation, I think is it'll be a really unique experience and probably like mind altering in the sense of like, oh, are any of us going to have like a realization halfway across and be like, oh, this is what I was meant to do with my life kind of thing, like come back and change your career and who knows. But it'll definitely be life changing, I think, sort of just that sense of isolation.
I think also as well that for me, I like to sort of reframe the idea of the vastness of the ocean and how small the boat is, because we're basically just stripping back what we're doing to just have the bare essentials of what you need to survive. And actually thinking, okay, we're in this vast ocean, but I've got everything I need on this boat. There is nothing else that I need. And we live in this world of sort of instant gratification where, you want a Mars bar, so you go get one, or you fancy something different for dinner than you bought, so you go get it. There is none of that option when you're out there. It's very much, here's another packet of dehydrated food that you need to add boiling water to and eat it. And then that's continually what happens over and over again until you get to Antigua. There's no, I'm just going to scroll mindlessly through Instagram, because power management and saving batteries is the most important thing as well, because we've got to use the energy that we produce for making fresh water and navigating and having like radio signal and being able to contact people. So there is none of this, I'll just do what I want whenever I want to. It's very much regimented. You've got your 2 hours to get yourself up to the best physical condition that you can do, considering you're on an 8-meter boat. And then you've got 2 hours of rowing, and there's nothing you can do during your 2 hours of rowing. There's no, I'll just stop and like have a bit of a stretch or just, be slightly less sort of focused on it. No, you've got 2 hours to make up as much distance as you can. So whilst we're small and it's vast, we've got everything we need, and we don't need to think about the fact that there is nothing around us, because we don't need anything that's around us. So I like to think of it in that way, because otherwise I think it would drive you slightly mad thinking about how you're not going to potentially come into contact with anything else for a long time.
Well, I think it's it's almost like it's actually like a really beautiful thing to consider rather than a daunting thing to consider, that sort of vastness and sort of isolation. But Laura, talk to me about the isolation, because when we last met, you talked to me about kind of the sensory deprivation element of what you're doing, because obviously it's going to be nighttime half the time. You're rowing in the dark because you can't see anything. There's no landmarks. Like, how are you preparing for that?
I think there's lots of stuff that you can do. So there's putting a rowing machine into a darkened room and getting rid of any like screen or any notion of time around you. And other crews have said that they do that, and they just get somebody to come and knock on the door after 2 hours is up, so that you get yourself into the boredom, being able to actually sit there and deal with the boredom of actually nothing happening. Because when we're rowing through the night, there might be some really fairy tale situations where bioluminescence comes and it's like bright green and we have this most amazing star, all this stuff. But there's going to be days and days of nothingness. There's going to be days of Kit being boring, so I don't want to listen to her chatter. And
we had this conversation yesterday.
Or so the shift pattern that we do is 2 hours on, 2 hours off, but after your first hour, the person behind you or in front of you will change. So over your 2 hours, you row with 2 different people.
Right.
And we had this conversation last time we were on a training row, because somebody fresh comes on, but you're in your second hour, and so then they're start like nattering away. Oh, having a great. You're like, God, I'm having a real sense of humour failure, right? So we're just chatting, and I said to Kit was just chatting away to me. And I was like, just so you know, it's like sort of 2 o'clock in the morning, and I'm on the second hour of my shift. So if I'm not responding, it's not because you're boring. It's because I have very low energy levels. But things you have to just be sort of honest with yourself that that's how you're going to be. It's not going to be, every day is not going to be a blockbuster movie where you want to write home about it. And it's I think it's important to become comfortable with that and know that you are just making steady strokes towards where you need to get to. The other side is that there'll be days when we have rowed 30 miles but been pushed back 20. So although we've rowed a certain distance, we've not made barely any progress, well, if any progress. And that's also a real mental block, to be like, I'm expending all this energy
and getting nowhere,
but getting absolutely nowhere, or knowing that another crew is gaining on us, or they're ahead of us because they chose a different, like a more southerly or more northerly route than us. And if we'd have made that decision 2 days ago, would we have been further forward than them? And you've just got to become really comfortable with the fact that you are making the right decisions for yourself. You're doing as much as you can do, and actually the sense of time and, like you say, the sort of sensory deprivation that you have is just part and parcel of stripping things back and getting to where you want, where you need to be. I'm definitely a very audio, like, Kit's very audio sensitive, whereas I could so every time she reverses the car, it's like everything's gonna be turned off, no talking. Whereas for me, I'm just like, just have the music on, just chilling around, just fine.
It's also like if there's a lot of noise going on for me as well. So yeah, it's just,
So for me, I'm just like, right, can we just have the speakers on all
Laura
the time?
will happily have a conversation with the speakers on, and I'm like, it's got to be one or the other. So this is hurting my brain.
So it sounds like everything's got to be very much process based. So it's just it's almost that kind of chop wood, carry water philosophy, where you're just doing the things that you need to do, and the kind of outcome of how many miles you've done that day is sort of almost secondary to the process.
One of the things that the race organisers said to us is when we went out to the start line last year and we attended a family and friends talk, and they said to sort of, because our partners all went out with us, and in this talk they sort of said, don't expect, when we're calling home, like, don't expect us to be like full of loads of excitement about loads of exciting things. Like, you'll ask them a question about what they've been doing that day, and they have rowed, they've eaten, and they've slept. So actually they're going to be more interested in what you've done that day, because it will be completely different to what they've been doing. So it's kind of like, don't be disheartened if they call home and they're like, what have you done today? I rowed.
Same as yesterday.
I have nothing to tell you. Okay?
Same as the last time I spoke.
What do you see? There's a lot of blue.
Yeah. And it's sort of like, don't be surprised if they're like, what did you eat for dinner? And they're like, oh, I had some vegetables. And you're like, and they're like, I really want some vegetables.
I think that's the thing as well. It's actually the expectations that other people have of you it's been really eye-opening for us, is knowing that, like, we're not really, like, we obviously want to meet people's expectations and exceed them in terms of the challenge, but also in terms of how we are coping with things. Like, especially parents are being told, look, when they get to Antigua, don't just ask them 1,000 questions, because you're going to get basically no risk. We were going to go back to being teenagers, where it's grunts and just wanting to sleep. The swaying that you get from even being on the boat for 24 hours is pretty aggressive, and that will die down. But then when you get to Antigua, you're just going to be rocking the whole time, because that's all you've known for 40-ish days. So I think that
you need to get your land legs back.
Yeah, but I think that people's expectations of us being able to recount these most incredible stories will definitely be something that happens, but there will also be a very high percentage of nothingness.
Yeah. It's mostly just rowing.
Yeah. Basically, watch what we did there. We did that continually.
Okay, so I love hearing about your mental preparation, your preparation as a team as well. We've got a relatively new segment on the podcast where we get to know the guests a little bit more with some quick fire questions. I still haven't thought of a good name for it. But I feel like, obviously you two know each other pretty well. But I feel like this might add to some of your mental preparation, team building, in an effort to, spend a month together on a 25-foot boat in a few months. So are you up for it?
Yep.
Yeah, definitely.
Fantastic. I'm glad you said yes. So I've got four envelopes here. 1, 2, 3, 4. And we've got 4 different categories of quick fire questions. So we've got either or, have you ever, deep and meaningful, or the last time. First of all, can you agree on a number envelope that you want to pick? Or is that going to be the first argument?
I'd probably go 3 personally.
Yeah, I was going to go 3, so that's fine.
Wow, brilliant. Okay, so number 3. What's the number 3?
Should have an argument just for the fun of it.
Number 3 is, there we go, the last time.
Oh, God. Great.
So quick fire-ish. We'll start with the first one. Okay, so last time, where's that? All right. Start easy. Last time you went to the cinema, Laura?
A very long time ago. I went to see, it was in Stroud. What was it? It was dreadful. It was really bad. The cinema was really bad. I can't even remember what the film was.
I'm really glad that I asked.
Had a really bad meal beforehand. Worst cinema experience ever. I can't remember what I even watched. It will come back to me what I watched, but it was Avatar 2. Dreadful. Would not recommend. Worst 3 hours of my life. And I've rowed for 3 hours on a rowing machine, so
a stunning recommendation for James Cameron's epic.
Pascal's delight over here.
Avatar 2 is terrible.
Well, I don't think I'll be seeing it now. I mean, the first one was pretty bad. Kit, what about you? Last film you went to see?
The last James Bond. I actually had a really lovely time. I went with my boyfriend and we got pizzas delivered to us in the cinema, which you can do in Everyman in Bristol. So yeah.
Wasn't that like 2 years ago?
Yeah.
Okay, that was a long time
ago. It was a long time ago. But
it was that memorable though.
It was memorable, yeah.
Okay, when was the last time you laughed till it hurt?
Last weekend, we had some scones on our poof. We call it a poufet in our family, which everyone rips it for me. And my boyfriend got some blankets and managed to knock the scones or scones, depending on.
It's definitely scones.
Definitely, it is so scones. It's unbelievable. But never mind.
Anyway, he managed to catch the scones with the blanket, and it went up the walls. And I have no idea how it happened, but it was just absolutely hilarious, and we're both crying with laughter as a result. So yeah, and because he turned around and it was like, oh my god, expecting a massive fly on the wall or something, but it was just jam all up the wall. It was hilarious. It's so funny. I was like, you're the only person I know who could do that, apart from me, maybe.
Laura, have you got one? Last time you laughed so hard it hurt?
We've got so many in-jokes in the team that sometimes it's just painful. Sometimes I have sort of afternoons or morning zoomies where I just get lots of energy, and then we just spend a good 45 minutes ripping the mick out of each other. You just spend the whole time being far too overexcited, and then I calm down, and then it's okay.
Yeah.
It's quite frequently that we have a very good giggle all the time.
Yeah. It's mostly surrounding if someone nearly fell off the bucket whilst they're doing a wee. Or it's quite entertaining.
Beth was sick for the first. She was the first person to be sick, and she was so disappointed in herself because she was sick in front of me. I don't deal very well with bodily functions, so that's my major issue with the row. And I was in the front seat and rowing, and Beth had to vomit into the bucket in front of me. That was a very awkward situation, but one that we did not let her live down,
No.
which is good.
I also probably laughed until it hurt then as well.
I can also hear her laughing in the room, and she can hear that we're telling this story, which is fantastic.
And she doesn't have to give her approval either. So
Exactly.
yeah. Okay. When was the last time you screamed because you were scared?
I don't think I can tell this story. But I had to
last weekend, because I thought there was a fly or a slug on the wall behind me, but it was just jam actually. Because of my boyfriend's face, it was like the look of horror, and I was like, "What's happened?" It was the jam, so that was why I screamed, because there's jam on the wall, but not because of the jam. It was the facial feature beforehand.
I think mine was another bucket incident, but I don't know whether I can tell the story. It's bad for you. It's the story when I had to run into the cabin.
Oh yeah, no, you can tell that. That's fine.
My bodily function situation where I don't like other people's happening near me. Kit said that she needed to use the toilet, and there was a 50-50 chance.
Toilet is a bucket.
Yeah,
by the way.
bucket.
Yeah.
She said there was a 50-50 chance it could be a number 2. So I ran to the other end of the boat as quickly as possible because I couldn't have this happen near me. I was like, ran away.
It was just the number 1, by the way.
Well, I'm glad we cleared that up.
Unfortunately, there's not enough space on the boat to have like a designated toilet, bucket use area.
Right.
So it's either be watched or not, or be watched or be watched really is the only option. So yeah, that was a scary moment.
That was pretty funny.
We might get far too close, far too soon.
I probably laughed until it hurt then as well.
All right, let's do a couple more. When was the last time you told someone something that you weren't supposed to?
Well, I told you last week that my everybody knows now, so it's fine. I told you that my sister-in-law was pregnant and nobody was allowed to know, but you were fine because you weren't going to tell anyone.
Yeah.
She can't come to Antigua to come and meet us because she's due on the 18th of January.
Right.
So I had to, they were like, oh, what's going to happen if, like, Tom and Holly, that's my brother and sister-in-law, are they going to be out there? And I was kind of lying, but I don't have a very good poker face. So I was like, I have to tell you something, but you can't tell anybody.
I actually don't know. I don't know. I don't know if it's because I'm a good secret keeper or I'm just not very good at secrets.
People don't tell you secrets.
Yeah, so I don't know.
You have to skip it.
Yeah, I might have to pass that one.
Skip that one.
I actually
Okay.
don't know.
Oh, fair enough. Okay. This is a good one. When was the last time you told a joke?
Me and my boyfriend tell each other terrible jokes all the time. So, yeah.
Well, there's an obvious follow-up question, isn't there?
Yeah.
What's the joke? Come on.
If a meat eater is a carnivore and a vegetable eater is a herbivore, what do you call really polite dinosaurs? Porfivores.
That is the worst joke ever.
It's not great.
I've got loads of dinosaur jokes, so I can send them in if you'd like.
Laura, what's yours? What's your best joke?
I don't know if I've got a good. I don't really think.
Well, I mean, you can't do worse than that. So
No, I know. We had a promo filming session not that long ago, and I had my AirPods in so that the videographer could get in touch with us because we weren't close enough for them to radio to us. And he called through and he said, "You all look like you're having a terrible time. Can you please smile? Because at the moment it looks like it's the worst day of your life." It was raining and it was not great, so it wasn't that much fun. But we just spent the whole time telling each other jokes. But Liz was awesome at telling jokes.
She's very, very dry.
Yeah,
very
and I can't think of
dry.
what any of them were.
Yeah.
Shall I give you one of mine?
Yes.
Is my 6-year-old has gotten into joke telling.
Fantastic.
We tell each other jokes all the time. So this is my favourite one that I've discovered recently is, why did the old man fall into the well?
I don't know. Why did the old man fall into the well?
Because he couldn't see that well.
That is pretty good, actually.
It's my new favourite. I love it.
It's very good. I think it's better Like dad jokes and kid jokes are the best.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that was it. Thank you for taking part in the segment that I still haven't thought of a name for yet. I hope it's added to your team building in preparation for your Atlantic run.
Some jokes.
Yeah, I need to get a little joke repertoire, don't I? I'm going to work on that.
Okay, so this is 80% Mental, and I'm here with Laura Langton and Kit Windsor, part of Team Ace of Blades, who are rowing across the Atlantic in a few months. And I hope you've enjoyed what you've been listening to so far. If you have, then leave us a comment on the website, 80percentmental.com, or you can tweet us at EPM Podcast, or we're on Instagram as well at 80percentmental. So please do get in touch. Let us know what you think. So, Laura, Kit, we've talked a little bit about kind of what you are doing the trip for and your sort of motivations behind it. What are your biggest fears going into this? Because, it is a big undertaking. It is a massive challenge. What are your fears about the trip?
I think at the moment, like, there are the obvious fears. There's the fears of things breaking, us not being able to resolve issues that arise whilst we're out there. The fear of the unknown, the fact that there's going to be situations out there where we are really tested and actually we can't prepare for them. There's going to be stuff that happens that has never happened to anybody before. Even, something similar might have happened, but it will never have happened in the same way. And I think, we've got to approach that with a bit of pragmatism and just say, right, this is something that we're not going to be able to cope with. And I think I keep on referring to where we are at the moment as this pressure cooker of everything needs to happen right now. That's the only option we have at the moment. We've got the boat. We've got to spend as much time on it as possible to get to know as much as we can do about how it works and how to fix things and how to be move around it and store things in the best possible way. So I'm really not thinking about the fears and trying to boil down what's the negatives. I think the fears are really the negatives of what could happen out there, and trying to embrace everything with a sort of positive mental attitude. Because I think if you start digging too deep into the fears and what could go wrong, you're probably going to have a going down the rabbit hole of catastrophizing and what could go wrong. I like to think that I'm quite a sort of solid personality where actually, I'll cross that bridge when I come to it, rather than necessarily think, right, if this happens, this is going to happen. If that happens, then that will happen. And here we are, we're going to be in the worst possible situation. I don't want to deploy the life raft. I don't want to live in a paddling pool with a roof in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean, which is what the life raft technically is, especially not with 3 other people and a very limited supply of food and energy and battery power and everything else. That's probably worst case scenario. And I think fundamentally I don't want to fail. I want to get across as a team that are stronger than ever, having done it in the time frame that we know that we could do it, and having done ourselves justice. And I suppose also actually there's loads now. Yes, I've done the thing I said I wasn't going to do. But also we've heard horror stories about teams where 2 people have fallen out and they've never ever spoken again. That would be horrific. I
thought you meant falling out, as in...
Yeah, so did I when she said that. I was like, I've not heard this one. Do tell.
There's stories where people, the irreparable arguments that they've had out there that have followed them through 2 or 3 years later. They still haven't spoken to each other, still haven't thrashed it out. And I get a bit emotional because we've sold our boat onto a crew that are doing the challenge in 2025. So we know that when we land in Antigua, technically the boat no longer belongs to us. We'll sign it over to a new crew that will have the same, wonderful but different experience to us. And also we spend so much time talking to each other at the moment. And I think about what the girls are up to and how we're going to sort stuff out. But when we land in Antigua, we're inevitably going to drift apart because we don't need to communicate as much. So knowing that there's the potential that 2 of us or however many of us might fall out and never speak to each other again is a real fear.
It's really sad, yeah.
And that's not an isolated example. So many crews have had that where they've just gone, she didn't like leave me enough water for a cup of tea, I'm never going to speak to her again. But when you're out there, that's like the worst thing that somebody could do to you. So it's and it's like, I think people think it's sort of a character defining moment, you know, being so selfish that you don't think of the others that you're doing the challenge with. So I think there is a lot of fears.
I think a lot of the fear, a big side of the fear element is the human side of it over everything else, because we are trying to put in mitigating factors or mitigating problem solving opportunities, we'll call them, if something goes wrong. So it's a case of sort of controlling the controllables, and we can't control Mother Nature, we can't control each other. And that really feeds into what you're saying about, if we do fall out, that's very human of us, and it would be really sad, and it's not something that we can necessarily control, but we can do everything we can to get to a place as a crew that we are as physically and mentally prepared for anything to go wrong on the boat, which will be inevitably scary, but we're very prepared for it. And also to be in a place mentally as a crew where we don't fall out because someone's not left enough water for someone to have a cup of tea or rehydrate their meal to the specific consistency that they may desire that day, kind of thing. So I think I kind of feel like I don't necessarily know, as I said earlier, so I don't necessarily know what I'm scared of, but I know that I am going to be scared when I'm doing it. And it could be something that's really, I wouldn't think that I would have got scared of, kind of thing. And I'm kind of looking forward to finding that out about myself a little bit.
And I was going to ask about greatest hopes for the trip as well. And I wonder if that's the same thing, if it's more to do with the human element of it than anything else.
I think greatest hopes is just to like have an incredible time and have a really good experience doing it. Like even on the like awful days, is that we'll still be like all mucking in, doing it together as a team, and we've got that like little image of us at our head of stepping onto land. Our like people are there to greet us. We are then going to have some fresh fruit, and then just sort of being as close, being closer, and sitting on the beach having a beer. Like I think that's sort of, for me, that's like a big thing that is sort of carrying me through a lot of this as well.
I think also as well that, you know, we started talking about this probably October 2020, signed up in January 2021, and will have landed in sort of January/February 2024. So it's 3 years of your life that you know, given up is not the phrase, but that you have sort of put forward for this challenge. And to the greatest hope is that is the best 3 years we've ever spent working towards something. You know, like I'm getting married in June next year, and that's been definitely delayed because of the fact that I'm going across the Atlantic Ocean. Like everybody's got careers and different things that they've been trying to achieve. Like there's holidays we haven't been on, there's experiences we haven't done, there's certain things that you've missed out on because of the fact that the road takes ultimate priority. And actually you want to make sure that it's all been worth it. So I don't the greatest hope is that is the case. Yeah. I don't want there to be anything that makes me think, well, that was probably something I should have done better, or I could have tried harder with. Yeah. And any time that there's been sort of a bit of animosity in terms of, especially with partners, where you go, what, you're rowing again this weekend? And you go, look, come on, I know it's really unfair on you, but also, do you want this to be the best experience that we've ever had? You know, I know that all of our partners are really jealous of the fact that they're not actually doing it, and they've basically lived it, but they're not going to be breathing it. But they
get the good parts of being at this. Well,
I think they get
maybe
the terrible
not the start line, but the finish line at least.
But you know, and the hope is that it is completely worth it, and you know, fundamentally, you want to get off the other side and go, let's go to the Pacific.
Maybe in a few years' time.
Be the first women's cruise to do all three oceans, Indian, Pacific and Atlantic.
Well, you heard it here first. We're going to hold you to that now. I mean, whatever happens, it sounds like it's going to be an absolutely incredible experience.
Yeah.
And before we finish, tell me about the playlist.
The playlist is fantastic so far.
So we've got a Soundwaves Club on our website. You can access it through our website or through our Instagram and socials, where we're trying to curate a playlist of 3,000 songs to see us through. And also, I've had quite a few of my friends message me being like, I'm going to put this song on 4 times, so you can think of me every time. I don't know if it's like Venga Boys or something like that.
Find the details of it, because there are some hoots.
There are some hoots on there. We've got Liz's dad is ex-army, so there's some marching band songs on there already.
We've got Nimrod by there's a lot of hymns on there as well, because somebody from my work decided that I would need to have hymns overnight because it'd be a very different experience. And it's my 30th birthday when we're out there, so a family member has put on the number one song, the song that was number one when I was born, which is Mr. Blobby. So that's always been a real sadness of my life. And people are like, oh, what was the number one? I'm like, yeah, it's Mr. Blobby.
So for £3 you can go onto our website, send us a song, and it'll get added onto the playlist, and we're sort of slowly making it on Spotify, and I think we should definitely make it available to share to everybody.
Well, we've got some Tina Turner, we've got Jerusalem, Gustav Holst's I Vow to Thee My Country, some Frank Ocean. There's lots of obvious ones on there. Fleetwood Mac. There's some Green Day. Yeah. It's just an eclectic mix of all things. Somebody told me they're going to put some fiddly diddly Irish music on there.
Nice.
Which I'm looking forward to hearing. Yeah. The only problem is that when it's like a scorching hot day and we're like really pumped, and then Jerusalem comes on.
I'm going to learn the words and I'm going to sing them at the top of my lungs.
So yeah, I think it's a fun way of contributing to our journey and experience and
getting involved,
helping us experience different things.
Yeah.
We've got Row Your Boat on there, which is an obvious one.
We've got the classics.
Yeah.
But it's a really nice way, like you say, for people to contribute and sort of be part of what you're doing, but also to raise a little bit of money for charity. So again, we'll put the link for that in the episode description. So if people do want to do that, choose a song for the playlist, donate a little bit of money and get it on there. Let's get to 3,000 songs. Have you, because I sometimes do this when I'm in the gym, if I've got a playlist on, like I know what song I'm going to skip to for the last sort of 5 minutes of a hard run, or what the last song is going to be as I'm finished. Have you thought about that? Have you done that? Or are you just going to play it sort of, what's going to be the song that you sail into Antigua? God damn it.
I think we have to make a decision, don't we?
Yeah.
Because you
don't want to be like, the last sort of 200 yards with Mr. Blobby playing out. You don't want that.
I think because they film us coming in, so it's live streamed on YouTube for our arrival into Antigua. Yeah. And I think we actually need to decide what we're going to do. I would like to do something that's not obvious, but Liz has a very eclectic music taste, so we may have to.
I kind of feel like it should be Ace of Spades.
Yeah, that would make sense.
As we come in,
which is obviously where the name Ace of Blades came from.
Yeah, but
maybe it's a bit obvious.
Yeah, maybe. But like my go-to for the last 5 minutes of a hard workout is this Hold Your Colour album by Pendulum. So I don't quite think we'll be playing that. That's a bit of hardcore drum and bass for the afternoon.
Yeah, it depends what time you get into Antigua as well.
Yeah.
People trying to sleep. Oh, sorry.
Awesome. Okay. Well, look, if people want to find out a little bit more about what you're doing, or even better, if people want to support you and donate to any of the charities, how can they best do that?
So we're on all social media, Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, LinkedIn, Threads now, at Team Ace of Blades. And our website's www.teamaceofblades.com. And then there's all of our information on there. So you can find us pretty much everywhere. We do some quite fun posts, I like to think, some good blogs. And we're constantly updating on our training and preparation. So, and then you can also see the boat, which is beautiful.
Awesome, fantastic. Well, like I say, we'll put that in the link. Put the link in the episode description so people can go and find out a little bit more. But thank you so much, Kit Windsor, Laura Langton. Best of luck to you and to the other members of the team. Do you want to give them a shout out? By the way, we've talked for like an hour and we haven't mentioned it. I feel like we should talk about them as well.
There's the other two. They're doing their own thing. So Liz Watson and Beth Motley. So they're the other half of the awesome four of us. So.
Okay, awesome. Well, I hope that you out there in listener world have enjoyed listening to this episode of 80% Mental. I found it just really fascinating and interesting to hear about the mental challenges and the preparation involved in undertaking such an epic adventure. And I can't wait to have you two and maybe the other two after the trip as well.
Yeah, definitely.
You can get us on one and then them on the other, and then see if the stories match up.
Yeah, we can talk about how the sort of team bonding actually went after you've spent 40 days together on a boat.
Which dynamic it will be.
Yeah,
who's talking to who?
But I would love to speak to you guys again after you've completed the challenge as well, and talk about how that went. But you can listen to all of the other extremely high quality episodes of 80% Mental at the website 80percentmental.com. I'll say that again, 80percentmental.com, where you can subscribe and leave a comment if you want to. You can follow us on Twitter at EPM Podcast or Instagram at 80%Mental. We're not on Threads yet. I can't really get to grips with it. I don't know why.
We're leaving it to Liz.
Yeah, Liz is our social media guru, so she's like, I just need to figure this one out. I'm like,
yeah, we'll leave that.
Threads isn't singing to me yet, but we are on Instagram and Twitter. But leave us a review on the website, or you can leave us a review on Apple Podcasts actually, and tell everyone how great the podcast is. That would be really helpful. And there'll be more episodes coming pretty soon. So until then, I will see you next time. Well, I won't see you though, because it's a podcast.